Well, we had hoped this morning that our national security correspondent, David Martin, would be with us, but of all things, David had a kidney stone last night. But as they say in the Bible, all things have passed, and David is feeling much better right now than he did about 6 hours ago, so we wish him the best. Hope to see him in the new year. You might notice one thing in those tapes of the old Correspondents' Roundtable. There were no women in any of those roundtables, as far as I could see from way back when. This morning, of course, all of that has changed. So, Chip Reid, you're out there in Hawaii this morning. You and I are outnumbered, so why don't I start out with you? Let's talk about the president. He's on vacation, and I would guess in a much better humor than even he thought he would be 2 or 3 weeks ago, because he finally got some stuff done during the lame duck Congress. What do you think are going to be the president's priorities in the year to come?
Well, Bob, I think that they see this very successful lame duck period as basically a template or a blueprint of what's to come. The president will compromise when necessary or when he thinks it's politically to his advantage, but he is also going to fight very hard for things he deeply believes in, for example, as he did on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and as he promised to do on immigration reform. You're also going to see the president use the power of the presidency to keep the liberal side of the ledger happy. We just found out this weekend, number one, that a new Medicare regulation basically says that they're going to have what the Republicans decried as death penalties, end-of-life counseling, and there's not much the Republicans can do about that. And also the administration is going to set aside tens of millions of acres for possible wilderness designation, reversing a Bush administration policy. So there's a lot the president can do down the road that the Republican Congress won't be able to do anything to stop him.
All right, Lara Logan, on the foreign policy side of it, Afghanistan has got to be the #1 concern of this president right now. Do you see a major drawdown of troops come summer, or will it be a gradual drawdown?
Oh, it'll be a gradual drawdown, if any drawdown at all. I mean, it'll probably be more symbolic and political than anything else. I mean, but General David Petraeus, the top commander there, I mean, he is set. He has a very firm agenda, and he is doing everything he can to put as much pressure to bear. But he is hamstrung by the fact that there's a complete political breakdown in Afghanistan, within the Afghan government and also between the U.S. embassy and the Afghan government. There's very little diplomacy that's actually going on there, and that's the #1 problem in Afghanistan now. It's not military, it's political.
Well, Nancy Cordes, let's just talk about that for a minute. How is that going to sit with the Congress right now? If the president comes after saying we're going to draw down, that was part of the deal, is Congress going to just sit by and let that happen?
Well, he'll probably find some cooperation on the Republican side of the aisle. This is one of those areas where the Republicans and the president see eye to eye. They were never in that much of a hurry to draw down troops. They always said we should wait until the mission is complete. Don't rush the mission. Don't set timetables. So this is an area where Democrats might not be too thrilled, but the Republicans will go along with the president.
Sharyl Attkisson, let's talk about what the Associated Press says was the biggest story of this year, and that was the BP oil spill. There were a lot of investigations that were launched this year. Where does all that stand?
Well, you led the way on this program in talking about, you remember them trying to minimize the amount of oil that was coming out of the spill and trying to talk about how few gallons were coming out, how few millions of gallons, versus independent scientists who are saying many more gallons were coming out. This is where the rubber meets the road. Right now, the penalties are being assessed. The government has recently joined a bunch of private lawsuits, which is trying to determine how much BP will have to pay. Significantly in BP's defense, something that came out favorably for them last month was the Presidential Commission looking into this oil spill, investigating it, found last month there's no evidence that they favored finances over safety. If there was evidence that they had, that would be gross negligence, and their penalties could be 4 times higher, something like $17 billion instead of a possible low of $4 billion. So this is where we're now seeing why it was so important to BP at the time to downplay the amount of oil that was coming out of the spill.
Nancy, let me go back to you. Once you get past Afghanistan, what do you think is going to be the major focus on Capitol Hill this year? The Republicans are saying their #1 objective is to repeal health care. Do you think that's even possible?
Well, not right now, as long as the Democrats control the Senate. But keep in mind, in 2 years, there's going to be another big election, and Democrats stand to lose even more seats in the Senate, and they could end up in the minority. That would make things a little bit easier for the Republicans. Aside from health care, you know, Republicans haven't really set their agenda in the House. We've asked them, aside from that, what else are you planning to do? What are your priorities? And they always point us to the Pledge with America and say, well, these are our priorities, but that's a pretty vague document. So beyond that, they're looking like they're really waiting to see what the political landscape is before they set out their priorities, aside from what they say is their main priority, which is to decrease the size of government.
Decrease the size of government and cut spending. Do you know of anything specific, Chip, that the president is going to propose here? Because, you know, people talk about ending waste and abuse. Well, that's just a drop in the bucket. You're going to have to start thinking about programs. What does government give us that we can get along without to get this spending back into line? Where does the president intend to go on these things?
Well, certainly one thing this administration has tried to do all along is eliminate wasteful Pentagon spending. They certainly are not going to cut back dramatically on war spending, but some long-term projects, they believe, are things that don't need to happen. But I'll tell you, this president, even though he did say he's going to recall the Republicans' bluff on spending, and I actually think he will, but it's going to be about long-term spending. The last thing this president wants to do is apply kind of an anti-stimulus that will offset the spending that he has put through, the spending and tax cuts that he's put through in the stimulus number 1 and the more recent stimulus number 2. He's not going to do anything that's going to cut back on the growth of government. So I think when he talks about calling the Republicans' bluff on cutting spending, it's going to be long-term, Medicare and Medicaid, things like that. And I think he will be serious about it, but I don't think you're going to see dramatic cuts in domestic spending in the short term.
And keep in mind, Bob, there's now a blueprint out there for this, the Deficit Cutting Commission, which laid out its prescriptions for how to radically reduce the debt. It kind of got shoved aside and ignored because everyone was so focused on tax cuts because time was running out. But I think in the new year, Congress is going to revisit that. That's one area where Republicans and Democrats agree something needs to be done. They don't necessarily like all the tough measures that were in there, but we're going to have a vote on the debt ceiling come March. So this is an issue that everybody is going to have to deal with.
Lara, one thing nobody ever talks about is cutting defense spending.
That's right.
Do you see any cuts coming on that side of the agenda here? Because it seems to me, if the president's really serious about all this, he's got to be serious about cutting defense spending.
Well, one of the problems with defense spending is these huge programs that you have for very sophisticated weapon systems, you know, that are not being used, which were repealed and are now back on the table again. And those seriously have to be looked at. This is no longer an army that needs billions and billions of dollars on these advanced, you know, Striker jets that are not being used. And this is a war that is not really being paid for. I mean, this has serious consequences for the field. And one thing that I am hearing is that the budget pressure on the military right now is the most intense it has been in the longest time, that the scrutiny is beyond anything they've experienced since these wars began. So there is no question that they are under an incredible amount of pressure, and that's definitely going to have an impact. But how does that translate into what happens, the soldiers that you're sending into battle? Because that literally can translate in lives.
Sharyl, having Republicans taking control in the Congress, in the House, means you're going to have a whole new set of committee chairs. Are we going to see a lot of investigations launched? Because those chairs will have subpoena power now, and they'll be in a different party than the president.
Right.
So do you see anything significant happening there?
I do. I mean, as they say, to the victor go the spoils, and I don't know if people understand what a significant power shift it is when the chair people of these committees, these very important, powerful committees, turn over from Democrat to Republican or vice versa. For example, the committee that does government oversight will now be chaired by Republican Issa, who has made it clear he's going to go after the FDA. It's something he's wanted to do for years, but as the Republican minority member, he's been requesting hearings from the Democrat chairman, and all of his requests have been denied. That's typical. You know, whoever's in power gets to decide what the hearings are about. So now he's going to set the agenda, and he feels like the FDA is a top priority, looking into how the salmonella egg scandal and some problems with Johnson & Johnson and product recalls that happened very quietly, some say shouldn't have. He wants to bring some of that to light, try to do a little more oversight in different areas. So you'll definitely see a shift in the targets and focus on Capitol Hill and House
I think
side.
Darrell Issa is the name we all better write down, because he is the chairman of that, maybe the chief investigatory committee in the Congress, and I think we'll be hearing a lot from him. I want to take a break right here for 1 minute. We'll come back and talk about who has the hardest job and will have the hardest job next year. Will it be the president, or will it be John Boehner, or will it be Mitch McConnell? Back in a second.